Hey, Reddit. I'm writing this because I honestly don't know what else to do right now. My world feels like it's spinning out of control, and I need to get this off my chest. For context, my wife, Amanda, and I have been married for 8 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but I thought we were solid. I truly believed we had something special, until last week. Amanda works in sales, and part of her job involves occasional business trips. She's always been great at what she does, and her team seems to really respect her. Last week, she had a 3-day conference in Chicago. I didn't think much of it. It wasn't her first work trip, and she usually comes back with stories about networking and how stressful presentations can be. But this time, something was different. She came back late Friday evening. I remember waiting by the door because I missed her. I'd even cooked her favorite dinner, pasta with creamy garlic sauce, hoping we could sit down, eat, and just catch up. When she walked in, she was glowing, practically radiating happiness. Her smile was wide, and her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen in a while. For a moment, I felt relieved. I thought maybe the trip had gone really well, and she was just in high spirits. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her suitcase and wrapping her arms around me. "You won't believe the amazing week I've had." I hugged her back, but something about her felt off. I can't explain it, but the way she smiled, it didn't feel like the Amanda I knew. It wasn't just joy. There was something else there, something almost smug. We sat down for dinner, and she started talking about the trip. She mentioned a big presentation she nailed, how her boss was impressed, and how the team had gone out to celebrate afterward. I tried to engage, asking questions and congratulating her, but there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. At one point, I asked casually, "So, who all went to dinner?" She hesitated for just a split second. If I hadn't been watching her closely, I might have missed it. "Oh, just the usual crew. My boss, a couple of colleagues, and some of the clients. Nothing crazy." That hesitation planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Amanda was always a smooth talker, but I knew her well enough to catch the subtle cracks in her story. Still, I didn't want to seem paranoid, so I let it go. After dinner, she went to unpack her suitcase. I was cleaning up in the kitchen when I heard her gasp from the bedroom. It wasn't a loud, dramatic gasp, more like a quick, sharp intake of breath. Curious, I walked in to see what was going on. Amanda was standing by the bed, her suitcase half opened. She looked pale, almost like she'd seen a ghost. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She turned to me with a forced smile. Yeah. Just thought I lost my phone charger, but it's here. No big deal." But her hands were shaking. I didn't press her, though I should have. Instead, I offered to help her unpack, but she waved me off, saying she was tired and wanted to get some sleep. That night, as she lay beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, Amanda left early to run some errands. She said she needed to pick up groceries and stop by the office to drop off some paperwork. I decided to take the opportunity to do something I'd never done before, go through her suitcase. I know. It's a terrible thing to do, but the doubt in my mind was eating me alive, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. Her suitcase was still on the floor where she'd left it. I unzipped it slowly, my heart pounding. At first, everything looked normal. Clothes, toiletries, a few receipts. But then I found it. Buried beneath her neatly folded shirts was a small, wrapped gift box. It was tied with a red ribbon, and my name was written on a tag. For Jacob. Confused, I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a sleek watch, one I'd mentioned wanting months ago but had forgotten about. For a moment, I felt guilty for doubting her. Maybe I'd been overthinking everything. Maybe the trip really had been as innocent as she said. But then I noticed something else. At the bottom of the suitcase, hidden beneath the lining, was a crumpled piece of paper. It looked like a receipt, so I pulled it out to take a closer look. It wasn't just a receipt. It was a handwritten note. "Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you. Until next time, Jay." My hands went cold. My chest tightened. I felt like I was going to throw up. Who the hell was Jay? I stood there staring at the note, my mind racing in 100 different directions. Who was Jay? What had happened on that trip? My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced myself to sit down on the edge of the bed, gripping the paper so tightly my knuckles turned white. The handwriting was unfamiliar, sharp and confident, almost taunting. The words echoed in my mind. Last night was unforgettable. My stomach churned as I tried to make sense of it all. This couldn't be happening. Not Amanda. Not my wife. I glanced over at her suitcase, as if it might hold more answers. Slowly, I started going through it again, more thoroughly this time. I checked every pocket, unfolded every piece of clothing, and even dumped out her toiletries bag. Nothing else stood out. The note was the only clue I had, but it was enough to make my head spin. By the time Amanda got back, I was sitting in the living room, trying to act normal. She walked in with a smile, holding a couple of grocery bags. "Hey, babe, I got everything we needed." "Thanks," I muttered, barely looking at her. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. She frowned, setting the bags on the counter. "You okay? You've been quiet today." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired. Didn't sleep well last night." Her expression softened, and she walked over to kiss me on the forehead. "You work too hard, Jacob. You need to take it easy." The irony of her concern almost made me laugh, but I bit my tongue. Instead, I nodded and got up to help her put the groceries away. All the while, the note burned a hole in my pocket. Over the next couple of days, I couldn't stop obsessing over it. Every time Amanda smiled at me, every time she kissed me or told me she loved me, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Was it all a lie? Was she pretending? Or was I losing my mind? I needed more evidence. One evening, after she'd gone to bed, I decided to check her phone. She usually kept it locked, but I'd seen her enter her passcode before. It wasn't hard to remember. My hands shook as I picked it up from the nightstand and quietly unlocked it. Her messages were the first thing I checked. Most of them were normal, chats with her coworkers, her sister, and a couple of her girlfriends. But then I saw a name that made my blood run cold. Jason. I opened the thread, and my worst fears were confirmed. The messages weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. "Jason, miss you already. Hope the flight home wasn't too boring. Amanda, it was okay. Just wish I could have stayed longer. Jason, next time, we'll make it even more unforgettable." Winky face. I scrolled up, my heart pounding harder with each passing second. The messages painted a clear picture. Long conversations late at night, flirty emojis, inside jokes I didn't understand. They'd been talking for months, maybe longer. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. This was real. Amanda was cheating on me. I put the phone back on the nightstand and walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I stared at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the man looking back. My face was pale, my eyes bloodshot. I felt like screaming, but I couldn't risk waking her up. Instead, I sank to the floor and let the tears come. The next morning, Amanda acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me goodbye before heading to work, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As soon as she was gone, I went back to her phone, this time digging through her emails. That's when I found the hotel confirmation. She hadn't stayed at the conference hotel with her coworkers. The reservation was for a boutique hotel across town, one with just her name on the booking. I Googled the place and found pictures of luxurious rooms with canopy beds and private jacuzzis. My stomach turned as I imagined her and Jason there, laughing, kissing, doing God knows what else. I knew I needed to confront her, but I didn't want to rush into it. If I accused her without solid proof, she'd just deny it. I had to be smart about this, so I did the only thing I could think of. I called in sick to work and spent the entire day figuring out my next move. That evening, when Amanda got home, I acted like everything was normal. We ate dinner together, watched a show on Netflix, and went to bed. She fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and replaying everything in my mind. Finally, I decided what I was going to do. The next day, while she was at work, I drove to the boutique hotel. I walked up to the front desk, my heart pounding, and asked if they could confirm a recent reservation under Amanda's name. The receptionist gave me a polite smile. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't share that information without the guest consent." I expected that answer, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. Just as I was about to leave, an idea struck me. "Actually, could you check if I left my jacket in the room?" My wife and I stayed here last week, and I think I forgot it. The receptionist hesitated, then nodded. Sure, let me check. She typed something into her computer, then disappeared into the back room. A few minutes later, she returned, shaking her head. Sorry, I didn't find anything. But I didn't care about the jacket. I cared about what I saw on her screen, the reservation dates. Amanda had stayed there for all 3 nights of her trip. That was the confirmation I needed. When I got home, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at my phone, debating whether to call her right then and there. But I decided against it. No, I wanted to see her face when I confronted her. I wanted her to know she couldn't lie her way out of this. The moment of truth was coming, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. But I didn't have a choice. The following day felt like a ticking time bomb. Every second dragged as I replayed the conversations, the messages, and that damning note in my head. I kept asking myself how long this had been going on. Was it just Jason, or had there been others? Had my entire marriage been a lie? When Amanda walked in after work that evening, she greeted me with her usual smile. I didn't respond. Instead, I motioned for her to sit at the dining table. She gave me a confused look but complied. What's going on, Jacob? She asked, her voice light but wary. I stared at her for a moment, trying to keep my emotions in check. My heart was racing, and I could feel my hands trembling. I need to ask you something, and I want the truth, Amanda. No games, no deflecting, just the truth. Her smile faltered. Okay, you're scaring me. What's this about? I pulled the note from my pocket and placed it on the table in front of her. Her eyes flicked to it, and in an instant, her expression changed. The blood drained from her face, and her hands froze mid-movement. Where did you get that? She whispered, her voice barely audible. From your suitcase, I replied, my voice cold. Care to explain what this is? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape. Jacob, it's not what you think, she finally said, her voice shaking. Oh, really? I leaned forward, my voice rising. Because it looks exactly like what I think it is. You've been lying to me, Amanda. Who the hell is Jason? Her head snapped up, and her eyes widened. For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked, but I wasn't buying it. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Don't lie to me. I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. I saw the messages. I know you weren't staying at the conference hotel. I know you've been sneaking around with him. So stop pretending and tell me the truth. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't move me. I'd seen those tears before. She was good at turning them on when she needed to manipulate someone. Okay, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Okay, fine. Yes, I've been talking to Jason, but it's not what you think. We're just friends. Nothing happened, I swear. I let out a bitter laugh. Friends? Do friends send each other notes like this? Do friends book boutique hotels for secret rendezvous? Do friends text about making things unforgettable? She opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it again, unable to come up with an answer. I stood up, pacing back and forth. Do you even realize what you've done? How could you do this to me, Amanda? To us? I gave you everything. My trust, my love, my loyalty, and this is how you repay me. I didn't mean for it to happen, she cried, burying her face in her hands. It was a mistake, Jacob. I was lonely, and he was there for me in a way you haven't been lately. That comment hit me like a slap in the face. You're blaming me for this? Are you serious right now? I'm not blaming you, she said quickly, her voice desperate. I'm just trying to explain. Don't, I cut her off. Don't you dare try to justify this. I've been nothing but faithful to you, Amanda. I've been here every day, supporting you, loving you, and you throw it all away for some fling with your coworker? She didn't answer. The silence was deafening, and in that moment, I knew there was no coming back from this. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice breaking. I can't look at you, talk to you, or even be in the same room as you. You've destroyed everything, Amanda. Her tears flowed freely now, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. What are you saying? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm saying I'm done, I said firmly. I need some time to think, to figure out what's next. But right now, I need you to leave. She looked at me in shock, as if she hadn't expected things to escalate this far. Jacob, please, leave, I repeated, my voice icy. She hesitated for a moment, then got up and walked out of the room. I heard her footsteps as she went upstairs to pack a bag. When she came back down, she paused by the door, her eyes pleading with me one last time. I didn't say a word. As the door closed behind her, I sank into a chair, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The house was silent, but my mind was louder than ever. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The house felt emptier than ever after Amanda left. The silence was suffocating, and every corner seemed to remind me of her betrayal. Her favorite coffee mug on the counter, the blanket she always wrapped herself in while watching TV. Even the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air felt like a cruel reminder of what I'd just lost, or, rather, what she had destroyed. I barely slept that night. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the confrontation, her excuses, and the look on her face when I told her to leave. Was she sorry? Or was she just upset that she got caught? I wanted to believe that part of her regretted what she'd done, but after reading those messages, it was hard to imagine she cared about me at all. The next morning, I woke up groggy and with a pounding headache. I stumbled into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat down at the table. That's when it hit me. I had no idea what to do next. Amanda and I had built a life together. We shared a house, finances, and countless memories. How was I supposed to untangle all of that now? I decided to take a day off work to clear my head. I spent the morning pacing the house, trying to figure out my next move. Part of me wanted to call her and demand more answers, but I knew it wouldn't help. Amanda was good at twisting words, and I didn't trust myself to stay calm. Instead, I started going through her things. Her dresser drawers were still full of clothes, and her jewelry box sat untouched on the nightstand. I opened it, half expecting to find some hidden clue, but it was just the usual: necklaces, earrings, and a couple of bracelets I'd given her over the years. I was about to close it when something caught my eye, a small envelope tucked into the back. I pulled it out and opened it, my heart racing. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a photograph. The photo showed Amanda and Jason standing close together, smiling. They were at some kind of event, both dressed up like it was a fancy dinner or gala. She hadn't mentioned anything like this, and judging by the date on the back, it had been taken months ago. The note was even worse. Amanda, I'll never forget that night in Chicago. You're amazing in every way. Can't wait for the next trip. My hands were trembling as I read it. This wasn't just a fling. It wasn't some one-time mistake like she'd claimed. This had been going on for a while, and they clearly had plans to see each other again. Anger surged through me, but it was mixed with something else: hurt, deep, gut-wrenching pain that made me feel like my chest was caving in. How could she do this to me? To us? I thought about all the times I trusted her, the nights she'd come home late from work, the weekends she'd spent catching up on projects. Had all of it been a lie? I needed answers. Real answers. Not the half-truths Amanda had fed me during our confrontation. I knew I couldn't trust her to come clean, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. First, I searched for Jason. It wasn't hard to find him. His LinkedIn profile popped up immediately. He worked in the same company as Amanda, just as I'd suspected. His picture showed a confident, clean-cut guy with a smug smile that made my blood boil. He wasn't anything special, but clearly, he'd been special enough for Amanda. Next, I checked her email account. She'd saved the password on our shared computer, and I knew she wasn't the most tech-savvy person. Sure enough, I got in without any trouble. Her inbox was full of work emails, newsletters, and random promotions, but it didn't take long to find a thread with Jason. Their messages were nauseating. They talked about everything: their secret meetups, the lies they told to keep me in the dark, even inside jokes about how clueless I was. One email stood out among the rest, though. It was from Jason, sent just a week before her trip to Chicago. Amanda, I booked the hotel for next week. Same place as last time. Can't wait to see you. Let me know what time your flight lands so I can pick you up. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. She had planned everything, lied to my face, and gone off to spend 3 nights with him while I sat at home like an idiot, thinking she was at a conference. For the first time since I found that note, I felt like I might actually lose it. I wanted to scream, throw something, break something, but instead, I just sat there, staring at the closed laptop. What was the point? None of this would undo what she'd done. Still, I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. If Amanda thought she could walk all over me and get away with it, she was dead wrong. I didn't know how, but I was going to make sure she faced the consequences of her actions. And I knew exactly where to start. The anger simmered inside me like a slow-burning fire. I wasn't just going to let Amanda and Jason get away with this. Not without exposing the full extent of their betrayal. I needed to know everything, no matter how painful it might be. That evening, after calming myself down, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and started writing out everything I knew so far. The note in her suitcase, the hotel reservation, the emails. It all painted a clear picture of their affair. But I needed more. If I was going to confront Amanda again, I needed irrefutable proof. The next morning, I called in sick to work again and decided to follow Amanda. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but I had a gut feeling there was more to the story. She left the house around 8:30, just like she always did, dressed in her usual business attire. I gave her a 5-minute head start before grabbing my car keys and heading out. I kept a safe distance as I followed her downtown. She drove straight to her office building, parked, and went inside. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd been wrong, that she was just going to work like any other day. But then I noticed another car pulling into the lot, a black sedan I'd never seen before. A tall man stepped out, and my stomach turned when I realized it was Jason. He was carrying a bag of what looked like coffee and pastries, and instead of heading straight inside, he stood near the entrance, checking his phone. Moments later, Amanda came out of the building. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I watched them. She smiled at him, the same smile that used to be reserved for me, and they exchanged a quick hug. It wasn't overly intimate, but it was enough to confirm that their relationship wasn't strictly professional. They stood there talking for a few minutes before heading back into the building together. I sat in my car, heart pounding, debating what to do next. Should I storm in and confront them right then and there? Or should I wait, gather more evidence, and hit them with it later? I decided to wait. As much as I wanted to make a scene, I knew it wouldn't accomplish anything. I needed a plan. That night, when Amanda came home, I acted like everything was normal. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and asked about my day, completely oblivious to the fact that I'd been following her. It made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. Work was fine, I lied. How about you? Busy day? Yeah, the usual, she replied, grabbing a glass of water from the kitchen. Lots of meetings, but nothing too exciting. I nodded, pretending to be engrossed in the TV, but my mind was racing. How could she lie so effortlessly? How many times had she done this before? Over the next few days, I kept a close eye on her, watching for any signs of deceit. I went through her phone whenever she wasn't looking, checked her emails, and even installed a tracking app on her car. It felt invasive and wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. I needed answers. That's how I found out about their next meeting. Jason had sent her a message suggesting they grab dinner after work on Friday. Amanda's response made my stomach churn. Sounds perfect. Can't wait to see you. I knew I couldn't sit back and let it happen. I needed to see it for myself. Friday evening, I waited outside the restaurant they'd agreed on, parked across the street where I had a clear view of the entrance. Sure enough, around 7 p.m., Amanda showed up. She looked different. Her hair was styled, and she was wearing a dress I hadn't seen in months. She'd clearly gone out of her way to look good for him. Jason arrived a few minutes later, and they greeted each other like old friends. No, not friends, like lovers. He placed a hand on her lower back as they walked inside, and she didn't flinch or pull away. I sat there, watching through the window as they laughed and talked over dinner. They looked so comfortable together, so at ease, like they didn't have a care in the world, like I didn't exist. It was the final straw. I didn't storm in or confront them right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. I zoomed in on the window, capturing every smile, every laugh, every subtle touch. I wanted proof, undeniable evidence that she couldn't talk her way out of. When they left the restaurant, I followed them to the parking lot. Jason walked her to her car, and just before she got in, he leaned in and kissed her. My stomach dropped as I captured the moment on video. This wasn't just a fling. It wasn't some innocent mistake. It was a full-blown affair, and now I had all the proof I needed. When I got home that night, Amanda was already in bed, pretending like nothing had happened. But she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, organizing the evidence. The messages, the emails, the videos. I put it all into a folder labeled Amanda's Lies. I wasn't sure how I was going to confront her, but one thing was certain. There was no going back. I spent the weekend stewing in my own thoughts. Every time I replayed the video of Amanda and Jason kissing, the pit in my stomach grew deeper. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the audacity. They didn't even try to hide it. How long had they been laughing behind my back? How many nights had I sat at home like an idiot, believing her lies while she was out with him? By Sunday evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. I had to lay everything out in the open and watch her squirm under the weight of her deceit. Amanda was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. I walked into the room, laptop in hand, and stood in front of her. "Hey," I said, my voice tight. "We need to talk." She looked up, her expression shifting from relaxed to cautious. "What's going on?" I didn't say anything at first. Instead, I set the laptop on the coffee table, opened the folder labeled Amanda's Lies, and hit play on the video. The color drained from her face as she watched herself laughing and kissing Jason in the restaurant parking lot. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she stared at me, wide-eyed. "Jacob, I can explain. Don't." My voice was calm, but firm. "Don't even try. I've seen the messages, Amanda. I know about the hotel. I know about Jason. And I know you've been lying to me for months." She opened her mouth to respond but closed it again, clearly at a loss for words. "You've been treating me like a fool," I continued, my voice shaking with anger. "Every time you said you were working late, every time you went on those business trips, you were with him, weren't you?" Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. "Why, Amanda?" I demanded. "Why would you do this to me? To us?" Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't care. I'd seen enough fake tears to last a lifetime. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I swear, Jacob, it just happened. It just happened?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Are you serious? Affairs don't just happen, Amanda. You made a choice. You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to destroy everything we built together." "I was lonely," she shouted, her voice breaking. "You've been so distant lately, so wrapped up in work. I felt invisible, Jacob. And Jason, he noticed me. He made me feel wanted." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "So this is my fault? You're blaming me for your affair?" "I'm not blaming you," she said quickly. "I'm just trying to explain. I never wanted to hurt you, Jacob. I love you." I laughed bitterly. "Love me? You've got a funny way of showing it." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Please, Jacob," she pleaded. "We can fix this. I'll end things with Jason. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." "It's too late for that," I said, my voice cold. "You didn't just cheat on me, Amanda. You lied to me, over and over again. You let me believe everything was fine while you were out building a life with someone else. How am I supposed to trust you after this?" Her tears turned into full-blown sobs, but I felt nothing. The woman sitting in front of me wasn't the Amanda I thought I knew. She was a stranger, a liar, a cheater, and someone who had completely destroyed my trust. "I need you to leave," I said finally, my voice steady. She looked at me, stunned. "What?" "No, Jacob, please, leave," I repeated. "I don't want to see you right now. I don't even want to look at you. Just go." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she stood up and walked to the bedroom. I heard her packing a bag, her sobs echoing through the house. When she came back down, she paused by the door, looking at me with tear-streaked cheeks. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked quietly. I don't care, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. That's not my problem. She opened the door and walked out without another word. As soon as it closed behind her, I felt a wave of relief mixed with crushing sadness. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with, and she had destroyed everything. That night, the house felt colder than ever. I sat in the living room, staring at the laptop, wondering what I was supposed to do now. Amanda was gone, but the pain remained, a constant reminder of her betrayal. I knew this was just the beginning. There would be fallout, questions from friends and family, awkward conversations at work, and the daunting task of figuring out how to move forward. But for now, all I could do was sit in the silence and try to make sense of what my life had become. The days after Amanda left felt like a blur. The house was eerily quiet, and I found myself avoiding certain rooms, like the bedroom we used to share. It felt like a crime scene, each corner tainted with memories I didn't want to revisit. I threw myself into work, hoping to distract myself, but the silence followed me there too. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd glance at it, half expecting it to be Amanda, even though I told myself I didn't care. But she didn't call. She didn't text. That was until Thursday. Around noon, my phone lit up with her name. My heart sank as I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Hello? Jacob. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. Can we talk? There's nothing to talk about, Amanda, I said, keeping my voice cold. Please, just hear me out, she pleaded. I messed up, I know that, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. I let out a bitter laugh. Fix this? Amanda, you didn't just break our marriage. You demolished it. There's no going back from that. There was silence on the other end before she spoke again. I'll leave Jason. I'll quit my job if I have to. I just want us to be okay again. Okay. I snapped. You think we can just go back to being okay after everything you've done? You made your choice, Amanda. You chose him over me. Jacob, I cut her off. I need time, Amanda. Time to figure out what my life looks like without you in it. And honestly, I think you need time to figure out why you destroyed something good in the first place. She didn't respond, and I took that as my cue to hang up. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. Talking to her had only reopened the wound, and I realized I wasn't as ready to move on as I wanted to be. That evening, I decided to take a step forward. I reached out to a lawyer to discuss my options. The idea of divorce was daunting, but I knew I couldn't live in limbo forever. Amanda's betrayal had made it clear that our marriage was over, and it was time to start protecting myself. The lawyer was sympathetic, but her questions were painful. How long had Amanda been cheating? Did I have proof? What assets did we share? Each answer felt like another reminder of how much I'd lost. When the meeting was over, I walked out of the office feeling drained but oddly determined. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could take control of what came next. For the first time since finding that note, I felt like I had a plan. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to start picking up the pieces. By the weekend, I felt like I'd aged years in just a matter of days. The weight of everything, Amanda's betrayal, the legal steps ahead, the uncertainty of the future, pressed down on me like a boulder I couldn't shake off. But deep down, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her or Jason control my life anymore. On Saturday morning, Amanda showed up at the house unannounced. I heard the knock and, for a moment, debated pretending I wasn't home. But the sooner we got this over with, the better. I opened the door, and there she stood, looking like a shadow of the confident woman I used to know. Her makeup-free face and messy hair told me she hadn't been sleeping much either. Jacob, she started, her voice quiet. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I had to come. I stepped aside, letting her in. You've got 5 minutes. Say what you need to say. She hesitated, as if gathering her thoughts, then sat down at the dining table. I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About us. About what I did. I stayed standing, crossing my arms. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, she said, her voice cracking. But I need you to understand that I never stopped loving you. What I did was wrong. There's no excuse for it. Jason, He was a mistake. A huge, stupid mistake. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let her words sway me. A mistake? You don't accidentally have an affair, Amanda. You don't mistakenly book hotels or kiss someone in parking lots. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel the same sympathy I once might have. I hate myself for what I've done. I know I ruined everything, Jacob, but I can't stand the thought of losing you. Here's the thing, I said, my voice steady. You already lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough. You broke something that can't be fixed. She started to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. I've spoken to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Her face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands, sobbing. Please, Jacob, don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. Anything. Just don't give up on us. I didn't give up on us, I said firmly. You did. And now, I'm just choosing myself for once. I walked to the door and opened it, signaling that the conversation was over. You should go. Amanda looked up at me, her tear-streaked face full of desperation. I love you, she whispered. I didn't respond. She stood slowly, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door. I closed it behind her, leaning against it as the finality of my decision sank in. That night, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and even a flicker of hope. I'd lost the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally start thinking about what I wanted. And that, at least, was a step in the right direction.